There's a human kidney, preserved to this day, in the historical archives of London. It arrived by post in 1888, addressed to a man who led a vigilance committee formed by the residents themselves, because the police simply couldn't keep up. Enclosed was a letter. The sender claimed he had fried and eaten the other half, and said he found it delicious. He promised to send the knife too, if the recipient would just wait a little longer. He was never identified. If this kind of story moves you, real stories, told from the inside, hit like right now, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Every one of those actions helps this channel keep bringing you files that most people will never hear about. Welcome to Concealed File. Long before any name hit the newspapers, Whitechapel was already a place where darkness felt right at home. Streets without light, alleys that swallowed voices whole, lodging houses where women slept crammed together for a few coins, among roughly 62 brothels scattered across the district. Poverty, there wasn't the exception. It was the rule. Years earlier, England had absorbed a wave of Irish immigrants. In 1882, thousands of Jews arrived fleeing persecution in Eastern Europe. The result, a neighborhood teetering on collapse from overcrowding, fueling alcoholism, prostitution, and rising violence against women. The police, overwhelmed, could barely keep up with the very streets they were supposed to protect. It was into this world that a woman turned up dead, then another, and another. With each body, something shifted. The wounds grew crueler, the scenes more exposed, as if whoever was responsible was losing his fear or developing a taste for what he was doing. This man didn't just kill. He wrote. He sent letters to the newspapers, mocking the investigation. As for who he really was, silence held for 137 years. Who was Jack the Ripper? August 7, 1888. A man named John Reeves finds a body inside a tenement building on George Yard. The victim, Martha Tabram, 39 years old. 39 stab wounds across her body, concentrated on the chest. Dr. Timothy Killeen notices something strange. The wounds seem to have been made by two different knives, one thin and pointed, the other with a blade over 6 inches long. The investigation goes nowhere. Verdict: willful murder by person or persons unknown. Nobody saw it. Later that month, a carman named Charles Cross is driving his cart toward the stables. It's almost 4 in the morning. He spots a woman's body lying in front of a doorway. Her throat had been slashed, brutally, twice. Her abdomen torn open by something razor-sharp. Mary Ann Nichols, 43 years old. At first, investigators try to pin the crime on a local gang. But the newspaper The Star runs a theory that changes everything. A single killer, responsible for every attack. The theory gains enough traction to bring in inspectors Frederick Aberline, Henry Moore, and Walter Andrews from Metropolitan Police Headquarters. And then, another body. September 8th, Annie Chapman, 47 years old, is found in the backyard of a house on Hanbury Street. The body is discovered by John Davis, who runs off screaming that someone's been murdered. She had been strangled, then mutilated with extreme violence. Part of her abdomen was removed and placed over her right shoulder. Another part, over the left. Uterus, vagina, bladder, navel, all taken. Near the body, a piece of a leather apron, which leads investigators to a known local suspect. His alibi holds up too well. He's released. A witness claims to have seen Annie with a man in a dark coat and a fine hat, who looked Jewish. The rumor spreads fast through a neighborhood already home to a large Jewish community fleeing persecution in Eastern Europe. Protests break out. Frustration with the police response grows so intense that residents form their own Whitechapel Vigilance Committee, led by George Lusk, offering rewards for any useful information. With the lead investigator sidelined on medical leave, Commissioner Charles Warren appoints Inspector Donald Swanson to take over. For one brief moment, after the arrest of a suspect named Charles Ludwig, many believe the nightmare is over. But every war has an end. This war was only just beginning. September 27, 1888. The Central News Agency receives a letter signed Jack the Ripper. For the first time, the name exists. The writer promises that in his next attack, he'll cut off his victims' ears and mail them to the police. Just for a bit of fun. And he keeps his word. September 30th, 1 in the morning. Elizabeth Stride, 44 years old, is found with her throat cut. The arrival of a man named Louis Deemschutz appears to have interrupted the killer before he could finish. Because less than 45 minutes later, barely 15 minutes away, a second body turns up southwest at Mitre Square. Catherine Eddowes, 46 years old, face mutilated, intestines draped over her shoulder, kidney and uterus removed, part of her left earlobe sliced off. 2 women, one night, 15 minutes apart. Hours later, 500 meters from the scene, a chalked message appears on a wall, quickly erased for fear of sparking further anti-Semitic violence. The reward for the killer's capture climbs past £59,000. Bloodhounds are brought in. Without success, the city's own scents drown out any trail. The next day, a new horror. A woman's torso is found in the basement of a building under construction for the Metropolitan Police itself. The press reads it as a direct mockery of the authorities. October 16, 1888. George Lusk receives a package. Inside, half of a human kidney. The letter that comes with it claims the other half was fried and eaten and found delicious. The handwriting is different from the earlier letters, rougher, full of mistakes. At first, this only deepens the confusion, raising the possibility of a second suspect or a copycat acting in parallel. But decades later, researchers would come to consider this the letter most likely to have been written by the true killer. Not someone chasing fame, but someone who could barely write. Nobody saw it. No one would ever learn who sent that kidney. Later in October, Police Surgeon Thomas Bond is called in to analyze the killer's behavior based on the victim's wounds. Without realizing it, he's about to write one of the first criminal profiles in history. His conclusion: all 5 murders were committed by the same person. The throat, always cut first. The victims, always lying down at the moment of attack. Bond describes the killer as a solitary man, prone to episodes of sadism and sexual mania, even suggesting, remarkably ahead of his time, that the man suffered from some form of mental illness. None of the victims were sexually assaulted. Instead, their genitals were destroyed, as if the act of exposure itself was part of the ritual. At the time, experts dismissed any sexual motive. Today, decades of FBI research into violent offenders show this is, by far, the most likely explanation. By the end of October, more than 2,000 people had been questioned, 300 formally investigated, 80 arrested on suspicion. Around 76 butchers were even brought in for questioning. Even Queen Victoria suggested the killer might work in the cattle trade, given the district's closeness to the docks. None of these leads went anywhere. And then, inexplicably, everything got worse. November 8, 1888. A rent collector named Thomas Bowyer knocks on the door of a shabby room on Dorset Street, chasing rent that's been overdue for more than 6 months. No answer. He peers through a gap in the broken window. What he sees inside changes the story of this case forever. The victim, Mary Jane Kelly, 25 years old. The youngest, the last. Irish, widowed young after her husband died in a mining explosion. She'd once lived in finer circles under the name Marionette and reportedly spent time in Paris. But life pulled her back into London's poorest quarters, where alcohol became a constant companion. Neighbors knew her as Dark Mary for the Irish songs she'd sing in the small hours when she'd been drinking. Months before her death, she asked someone to read her the headlines about the women being murdered in Whitechapel. Everything suggests she already knew. Someone was hunting women like her. Investigators find the room's fireplace burning with unusual intensity. Inside, women's clothing being consumed by the flames. The killer had burned Mary's own garments just to have enough light to work by. The autopsy takes 2.5 hours, conducted by Thomas Bond and George Bagster Phillips. The report stands as one of the most disturbing documents in the history of British police investigation. Her abdominal cavity, completely emptied. Her breasts, removed and placed beside her face. Pieces of her thigh, laid on the room's table. Roughly 2 liters of blood pooled around the bed. On Mary's right thumb, a small cut. She had tried to fight back. The killer took roughly 2 hours to inflict every wound. Commissioner Charles Warren even offers a pardon to any accomplice willing to reveal the killer's identity. No one comes forward. Mary was buried 10 days later. On her headstone, a simple line, that none but the lonely heart could know her sorrow. For many scholars, this is where Jack's bloody trail came to an end, but London still held more strange deaths to come. In the months that followed, more women turned up dead under similar circumstances. Rose Millet, Alice Mackenzie, an unidentified torso found on Pinchin Street. None of these cases were ever officially confirmed as Jack's work. Some were too similar to ignore. Others, too precise to be his, hinting at copycats trying to wear the same shadow. In 1892, one last woman, Frances Coles, was attacked, her throat cut. A suspect was arrested. He was released a month later. After that, silence. No further deaths were ever formally recorded, and Jack the Ripper became a living urban legend, feeding the theory that a man of his nature would hardly stop of his own free will. Over more than a century, dozens of suspects have risen and fallen from favor. A cotton merchant whose supposed diary confessed to the crimes, but whose authenticity never survived close scrutiny. An escaped asylum inmate. A writer committed to the very Whitechapel Hospital during the attacks. Even a grandson of Queen Victoria. None of them held up under the weight of time. But there's a sharper portrait than any of these theories, built 100 years later, not by historians, but by someone who spent his career inside the minds of real killers. In 1988, former FBI agent John Douglas, of the Behavioral Science Unit, was brought in to build a full psychological profile of Jack the Ripper. According to Douglas, Jack likely came from a home ruled by a domineering mother and an absent father. He grew up emotionally distant. He tortured animals as a child, the first sense of control he'd ever felt. He likely worked in some solitary trade connected to death: a butcher, a mortuary assistant, an undertaker's aide. He carried a knife for self-defense, driven by a deeply low self-image. He drank in local pubs, growing more talkative after a few rounds. And precisely because he didn't fit the monster image everyone expected, he may have been dismissed as a suspect even while standing right in front of investigators. As for the letters, Douglas believes they were probably not written by the real killer. A man that isolated would hardly seek out that kind of direct exposure. And according to him, it's quite likely the police had already questioned the real Jack during the investigation, without ever suspecting him. Which brings us to a name. Aaron Kosminski, a Jewish immigrant, 23 years old, living in Whitechapel. Listed occupation, barber. A report from the time describes him as misogynistic, with strong homicidal tendencies. He would spend the rest of his life institutionalized in asylums, dying at 53. Douglas makes an important point. Inflicting wounds like the ones seen on the victims doesn't necessarily require advanced medical knowledge, something confirmed by other serial killers throughout history. Decades later, researcher Russell Edwards analyzed a shawl supposedly belonging to Catherine Eddowes. According to him, biological traces linked both the victim and Kosminski to the same item. But the shawl's provenance, its preservation, its chain of custody, all remain in question. In 2024, the academic community itself raised formal concerns about the study. The most honest thing to say, Kosminski remains the strongest suspect, not a certainty. The crimes of Jack the Ripper left scars that reached far beyond the bodies found on those streets. Entire neighborhoods were torn down and rebuilt. Museums rose to preserve the traces of that bloody autumn. There's something deeply ironic in all of it. If he had been caught back then, his name would likely be just one more among history's many killers. What turned Jack into the most infamous criminal of all time wasn't the violence of his acts. It was the simple fact that, to this day, no one has ever discovered who he really was. If you had to bet on one suspect, who would it be? Drop your answer in the comments. If this story stuck with you, hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell, because every week there's a real story waiting to be told. Stories that stayed hidden. Stories that need to be heard. The next one might be exactly the one you never knew you needed to hear. File closed. For now.